The Cold War has never really ended.
This is a very racist.
To stop the federal government from investing in new weapon systems.
Most of the mining comes from
Still
Canada.
under the Indian Act.
Again, snipers.
James Justin Jr.
Groceries gone. I have to let them out.
Soaked in the blood of Tigrayan.
From the river to
The revolution will not be won with hot takes. Welcome to the Red Review.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Red Review, a Socialist Action podcast. My name is Emily Steers. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm coming to you from the unceded territories of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples just outside of the Haldimand Tract, known as Guelph, Ontario.
Hi, comrades. My name is Daniel. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm coming to you from Takaranto, the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Huron-Wendat. All people in Socialist Action. We all live and work on stolen Indigenous land from across Turtle Island, so we echo the call of land back and Indigenous self-determination. There can be no reconciliation without restitution, and that includes seizing the assets of the major resource corporations and returning them to the commons. We are continuing with our Municipal Socialist Alliance coverage. The podcast has never been more active. This is our 5th interview in our first 8 days because the Municipal Socialist Alliance slate is 10 candidates from Toronto to Mississauga to Ottawa and to Guelph. And that's where we're going today with our one and only mayoral candidate, Danny Drew. Danny Drew is a non-binary activist running to be mayor of Guelph. Born and raised in Oshawa, they moved to attend the University of Guelph in 2009, graduated with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. Danny worked in a wide range of jobs, always encouraging coworkers to exercise their rights and push for unionization. Currently seeking to win rights for thousands of workers via reclassification, they've supported many striking workers on picket lines. Danny is a steadfast ally of ongoing social justice movements, such as Indigenous Land Back and Black Lives Matter, actively resisting the rising tide of fascism. Their main focus has always been poverty relief, offering labor, organizing capabilities, and vast quantities of recovered supplies for all those in need. At the onset of the COVID pandemic, Danny co-developed a renters union, as well as helped to operate a Food Not Bombs project. In the municipal arena, Danny pledges to fight tooth and nail for every possible concession from capital and its state. That includes a high-powered harm reduction strategy involving reformed social housing systems and relations, expanded and improved public transit, increased funding for mental health and drug user support programs, worker co-op and community land trust formation and expansion, and a drastically altered and reduced police force. Danny, as part of the Municipal Socialist Alliance, commits to expose the propaganda that keeps the bourgeoisie in power and the majority oppressed. In other words, a campaign for workers' government to increase class consciousness and spur unionization, mutual aid, and local self-organization to enable working people to improve their lives.
Yeah, welcome, Danny.
Oh, hey there. How's it going?
We're doing great. How are you doing?
All right. Pretty stressed out, but so it goes. So aren't we all?
Fair enough. Well, that's a fabulous bio. Super exciting, obviously, because I'm in Guelph. I'm so excited that we have an MSA candidate as well as many other really awesome progressives running here in Guelph. It's so great to see. Is there anything you want to cover that we didn't manage to mention in your bio?
No, I think the intro pretty well covers the main points of my run. I could talk infinitely about the various causative and strategical purposes of my run, but I'm not going to get necessarily into that right now because we're just at the intro.
I want to say, Danny, the way I found out about you, the way a lot of the MSA candidates in Toronto found out about you, was an article that was shared in one of our group chats that just had non-binary communists running for mayor of Guelph. And immediately that was enough descriptions like, okay, maybe reach out to this person. So I want to hear from your perspective as someone that was running a campaign initially as an individual. What about the Municipal Socialist Alliance? When we reached out, you thought, okay, maybe it's worthwhile joining up with these people.
Well, what grabbed me was actually the depth and specificity of the analysis I could see in the policy platforms you were putting forwards. I actually swiped a lot of them from my the PDF version of my platform that people can download because, yeah, you clearly put a lot of research into it. That was what initially grabbed me. Then I eventually started talking more to Barry and such after he'd reached out.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
And so if you'd like to go into a little bit more depth, so let's talk about your platform for the city of Guelph.
Yeah, sure. Anything in particular you'd like to hear about?
Well, you mentioned in your bio, you described wanting to increase worker power, unionization, mutual aid, all of these amazing things that I can attest our city is in absolutely desperate need in, particularly desperate need of municipal assistance. You know, there are amazing organizations like the Bench and Chalmers who are doing a lot of work, but without a lot of political support.
Mm-hmm. Well, basically, there are, as you're kind of indicating towards, there are a shitload of helpers in town. There's so many people that just individually, like they might bring a pack of socks to maybe as you referred to, the Bench, just to help a few people out, or like groups of like 2 or 3 who maybe distribute a few bits of clothing here and there. But this is great, but it's an incredible waste of energy and time and money because these people, there's a concept called overhead cost where like, even if you're just starting an organization of a couple people just to help feed people, there's going to be a lot of like setup and whatnot you have to do. Let's think about like cooking a meal for someone. If you're cooking a meal for yourself, you still have to turn the oven on and get it up to heat. The oven will still use just as much energy as if you were cooking for 10 people as if you're cooking for just one. Well, a little bit more, but that's what this overhead cost is the amount of energy it costs to get going, to start it. So with all of these, like, well, I would almost venture to say like thousands of people who help people in Guelph, there is an unthinkable amount of energy and capacity wasted in redoing these things that have already been done by others. It would be impossible to just start from scratch, but I would like to implement something like, for example, the Guelph Neighborhood Support Coalition. Their purpose ostensibly is to, well, do what I'm talking about here is connecting all the various helpers, small orgs, larger institutions together so they can share resources and organizational capacity and skills. But they are not doing it for one reason or another. It's probably a matter of funding and personnel or whatever. There's also something I learned about through PIN that apparently they have something like that, but no one knows about it. There needs to be some sort of overarching structure, a connective tissue that makes sure all of these things can work together well and not waste energy. Mm-hmm. For example, one more small example, there's Royal City Mission. They do all kinds of great work for helping with poverty relief. They have just on the regular mountains of bread. They can't get through it all. And then down the street, Hope House, they are constantly out of bread. These two people are aiming at the same goal, poverty relief, but they're not talking to one another and they're hundreds of meters away. It's... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we need a consolidation of all of these different networks.
Mm-hmm. It's something I often think about with our campaign because we are trying to build something from the grassroots up. The idea being, you know, even if you have a candidate running for something, they're more a representative of the movement that's being built rather than an individual. And in that way, hopefully, as we, you know, rise up and take power, that those things are coming in with us and behind us. As opposed to something, let's say, like the Bernie Sanders campaign in the United States, where they raised tens of millions of dollars. And just imagine what the anarchists and the radicals in your community could do with even a small fraction of that actual material wealth. Mm-hmm. Because the people in Toronto I see doing amazing work are doing it with essentially zero money, entirely volunteer, entirely grassroots collective. And they've made a big impact, yet if you started giving them the legitimate tools available to establishment politicians, that's when you're starting to talk about building of a movement, of a revolutionary movement that can actually challenge entrenched power. Absolutely. Rather than Bernie Sanders. I'm not sure exactly what he's accomplished. So if you have some thoughts on this and maybe some of the establishment politicians that have come before you in Guelph that you might want to put on blast. I don't know what Guelph's like. Go for it.
Yeah, please tell us more about Guelph, because so far we've been hearing from a lot of Toronto and Mississauga folks, and not a lot of people know about our humble little city.
Yeah, fair point. Well, since I'll be speaking maybe on matters of poverty relief and politicians, maybe I'll start off there. Guelph is, in a lot of ways, it's just, it's an illusion. It's got it's got a reputation as being a green city. It's got a reputation of being this high cultural center. It's got a reputation as being kind and diverse. It's none of these things, basically. It's incredibly white, incredibly full of incredibly privileged people who couldn't give a shit about, a homeless person on the street. It's less than 10 years ago, for example. Yeah, the arts and culture scene was bigger, better, but the establishments over the years, especially the most recent incumbent who's been in there for the last 8, has just been absolutely hollowing out the city. There's nothing left. It's completely drained of color and life. Mm-hmm.
can attest as an arts worker in Guelph. It's been really, really difficult. And there are places that are fighting really, really hard and clinging on tooth and nail to be these art spaces and, push green development and all of these things. But it's hard to tout yourself as a green city when most of the major roads don't even have bike lanes.
Yeah, and we have a borderline non-functional transit system. I was just talking to a bus driver the other day about that, because we were talking about there was just some really silly event downtown wherein hundreds of people will arrive to swarm the streets. That's not a problem. I'm not complaining about that, but all of them fucking drove. Like, they drove downtown. We have buses. It's just their punishment to ride,
Yeah.
They barely work.
I know that feeling well, too.
It's a very inefficiently laid out transit system.
And it doesn't have enough funding to, even if we kept the current routes and everything as they were, if we just had an extra bus on every route, it'd be a little more functional. But nonetheless, or, ran for a few extra hours at night so the people when the students weren't here, so the people working shift work or night shifts could actually get home and wouldn't have to shell out for a car.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of really ridiculous gaps in the system. The subway in Toronto stops running between 2 and 6, but there are tons of people that finish their shifts at that time, right? So a lot of people are falling through the cracks. I want to ask, from the very beginning, you've identified as a communist in this mayoral campaign.
Yeah.
What's the reaction been? I'm curious.
Well, I'm actually surprised. I was, knock on wood, but I was expecting even potentially violence, because, there are fascists in town. This is known, but I haven't seen anything. There seems to be from what I've heard, people either are saying, hell yes, a communist, or I don't give a shit that they're a communist because they got good policies lined up. It's very strange and very unexpected.
Yeah, and isn't that a scary sight for the bourgeoisie to think that the power they have of invoking fear with just the word is starting to disappear?
Yeah, that was actually one of the minor reasons I wanted to run, was just to widen people's political horizons. But apparently that work has already been done to some degree, because no one's scared of me. Well, except for the bourgeoisie, of course.
Yeah. and I also want to say, it's been really, really exciting to see a lot of the NDP membership locally really coming out swinging in support of you.
Even James Parr was had offered up to help volunteer for whatever purposes we need. It's great to see, even the quote unquote progressives, rad libs are coming out.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, you're trying to stretch, to use the phrase Overton window, and you're positioning yourself as the change candidate. And so what is the biggest change that is the first domino that needs to fall in what's going to be a long struggle against capitalism? What do you think is the most ripe for the picking, or a scab that you can just kind of pick at of the system, and you can start getting it to bleed a little bit and get the people descending on
in
that?
general, just what's being called by libs the affordability crisis. I think the primary part of that is housing, though. That's what I've been harping on a lot during in my rhetoric for the campaign, is just the 30% vacancy tax is what I'm calling for. Minimum, I'd go for 100, 1,000 if anyone would let me through. It doesn't matter. These people should not have those fucking houses. But I digress, though. It doesn't really matter if you can't afford food if you've already frozen to death.
Yeah.
And there are in Guelph, it's particularly ripe because we have an incredible quantity of vacant housing, far more than enough for every homeless person. That would be a drop in the bucket compared to all the vacant houses we have. We could house them all in the vacant houses I've found in a kilometer radius. It's ridiculous.
I think that's the reality. In Toronto as well, we have way more vacant units than people without a steady place to live. And again, that is a contradiction of the system. The fact that it's not a scarcity, it's an artificial scarcity.
This beautiful not in my opinion, but beautiful condos going up, just completely empty, just ugh.
Yeah, exactly. So what was the spark for you that made you decide, okay, it's time, I'm going to run for mayor? Because that's not always a direction that people want to go in when they have issues they want to raise. What was your precipitating moment?
Yeah. I guess the crystal that started the snowflake. There's a lot of different levels that I could answer this question at, but I guess the very first thing was when, actually, Emily, you might be aware that I used to run that just out on my front lawn. I had the free stuff table. It was a little kind of stuff exchange, free things library.
Yeah.
And that was during the pandemic. That was not even just for getting stuff to people that need it, but even just for building and maintaining a sense of community and interpersonal connection. That was a godsend. And the city took it away, illegally, mind you. They haven't responded to my request for an appeal. By the letter of their own law, they made an illegal decision. So they took that away from everybody. And so I'm fuck this. I want to at first, my decision to run as mayor was because there were already a bunch of good council candidates going forward. So I was like, screw it, I'll run for mayor, I'll yell at Cam. It was kind of going to be more of a just a protest run, but then a bunch of support came out of the woodwork, especially Susan Watson, for example, just local great person to actually support me. And so once I realized that I would have help, that people had my back and actually they really wanted change, hey, why don't I take this seriously?
Mm-hmm. And we do have a whole bunch of paper candidates for mayor, basically, who aren't campaigning at all. And I think the response you're getting, and what I've been hearing from people, has been so overwhelmingly positive. There's been so much excitement, and I think that just goes to show the level of frustration a lot of people have with our current mayor, Cam Guthrie, and the way things have been run, and a lot of the frustrations people have with city council generally.
Actually, I mean, just a short little thing. Yesterday, I was talking to some older fella, has a house and everything. He was an anti-bike lane crank, and yet, nonetheless, at the end of this conversation, I secured his vote. He's just so sick of Cam that despite me actively wanting to expand bike lanes and stuff, he's like, yeah, you got my vote.
Woohoo!
People are real sick.
That is funny. Danny, I just want to loop back really quickly because I picked up on a thing that kind of connected with some sentiment here. So you had a table where you would exchange free stuff in your yard, and city bylaw officers came and shut that down?
Yes, that's right.
Wow. So that I wouldn't be surprised if you heard what was happening in Toronto with Khalil Seavright, who was making tiny shelters, and he was sued by the city and shut down because, again, was just literally creating shelters so people wouldn't freeze to death in the winter. And it seems, as capitalism continues to decay, for some people, the impulse is, okay, we're just going to take care of ourselves. And yet what breaks the back of that camel then is when the city's like, no, you can't even take care of yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And that seems to be an impulse for people. It's well, then the whole system has to go. Is that something you resonate with? And is that something you're picking up with in your campaign?
I think so, yeah. Because exactly, we're not able to help ourselves even because everything's too expensive. We're not allowed to help each other. We're not allowed to exist on our own. So yeah, eat shit, system. Time to burn.
Yeah, time to burn. I love it. Have you been getting into debates at all?
There are no public debates this year, actually. So, I mean, I meant to go to all of them. I had to miss 2, sadly, due to just some personal stuff come up in my life, like deaths in the family, etc. But I went to one, Chamber of Commerce. Cam kicked my ass. He ran circles around me. It's my first one ever, but I did get some good hits in. I have 2 more coming up next week that I'm really looking forward to. One is the social justice. Loosely, it's a social justice coalition debate over at the United Church in Dublin. And there's another one at Bishop Mac. So I'm going to hopefully radicalize a bunch of kids.
Heck yeah.
Awesome. I love it. No, and just the opportunity to be able to get this, though. And you're right. It's a skill to develop. However far you get this time, it's just building that base for the eventual breakthrough.
And also letting the establishment know there is a radical undercurrent. There are people who are desperate for change, who are not getting their needs met. And you can't cover with, well, we're just going to take the center approach. And
we've tried that.
Everyone can just kind of eat shit and die. We're getting our own. No, people are unhappy and they're going to let you know.
And so, Danny, at this point, it's about 3 weeks until Election Day. What's been the biggest thing that you've gotten out there? What have you been the most proud of? Talk about yourself. Give yourself some props because it's a big undertaking you've taken on.
I guess I was briefly speaking to an incumbent councillor yesterday who recognized me just from, I guess, because I look recognizable. Yeah, they had mentioned that, I didn't know this, apparently most mayoral candidates prep 2 years in advance. I did a month in advance. So I'm proud, I guess in general, proud of me and my tiny little team's ability to have done anything at all with such so little time and so little experience, Because I mean, I can't go anywhere. It's actually pretty stressful. I can't go anywhere. I can't even go get a beer without someone saying, "Oh, it's the fucking mayor. Hey, I'm voting for you." It's like, oh my god, please, one moment, one night off. But yeah, just to have accomplished so much in so little time is, I think, something to be proud of. It kind of feels like, I'm not sure if y'all have read On Guerrilla Warfare by Che, but it kind of feels like a bit of electoral political guerrilla warfare.
Absolutely.
Just a tiny little mobile team just running circles around a giant political monster.
I love it.
Absolutely. So whatever the outcome is, although we're all hoping for a huge communist upset win, what would you like to see more of at city council with all of these amazing progressive candidates who are running for councillor positions. What are you hoping to see more of in the aftermath of October 24th?
I hope someone puts forward a motion to abolish the closed council sessions, because that's a little fucked up if you ask me. If it's the case, for example, they might give the answer. I'm arguing it's a straw man here, but what if they give the answer? Oh, well, we don't want companies responding to certain fiduciary matters that they might be able to affect the market via these decisions that are still being decided or discussed. Well, there's a contradiction to capital for you. We're not allowed to have open political discussion because capitalists might take advantage of that and fuck us over. Anyway, yeah. So in short, I'd like to see council be a little more transparent. People have been saying that for fucking years. It's not going to happen unless the absolute best slate of candidates get in.
Mm-hmm. What else would be some progressive policy that you could see happening at the city level?
Well, put up the fucking library. Stop yelling about it. It's planned for. It's budgeted for. Just put it up. We're wasting time. We could talk about other shit, you know?
Oh, yes. Oh my God, the library.
I'd like to obviously improve transit. I'd like to see them put the timeline forward on inter and intra-regional transit. We're like a decade behind, if not more, on that. Durham region is a shithole. I come from Oshawa, and they've had intra-regional transit since before I left town. Christ, this place is backwards.
It is embarrassing.
Mm-hmm. I would like to, this is a little bit further in the future. I'd like to see some more not white straight people in the council. And apparently we're going to be Guelph is taking a lot of immigrants in these days. So we're going to be actually a little more diverse. It won't be so horrifically white going forwards. But yeah, that's for next election.
And we talked about this with the last person we interviewed, but I don't know what Guelph is like in terms of the class character of its city council. But do you have any renters on city council? Any people that take public transit on city council?
I think outgoing James Gordon, I think he's by no means a renter, but I think he took the bus and such and biked around just on principle.
Mm-hmm. There was that experiment a couple of years ago where people raised a challenge to city councillors to take the bus exclusively and not use their car, but take the bus exclusively for 2 weeks. And all of them failed.
Wow, yeah.
Hell yeah.
And they all said, well, I couldn't get to important meetings on time.
Shit.
And I couldn't fulfill my duties. I couldn't fulfill my duties as a counselor and take public transit.
Wild.
And I was like, is that not the most screaming indictment of how awful our transit system is?
They're saying that they can't fulfill the duties of a part-time position via the bus. And this is what they ridiculous.
Yeah. And that's what a campaign like yours can also hopefully try and reveal, those contradictions. The fact that this system, even under the ideal conditions, whatever you try and imagine, fundamentally, there's a small number of people that are making money off of the majority of people. And there's no way a system in which those small people making all the money, who also have way more power because of all the money they have, for that to work for the masses of people. It's just fundamentally impossible. So trying to make that clear to people and to also incite in them the desire to take power for themselves seems like it's the ultimate task.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. One of the things, it's not in all of my rhetoric, because I've been trying to say so many different things. I couldn't say everything everywhere, but I made a point in, I think it was the Guelph Today article, because I knew that most people would be reading that one. I made a point to be very open about, I'm only able to do this, as I told them, because my fucking dad died and I got a lot of money. Well, not a lot. Me and my brother split the house money. So we got a little bit of money. I don't have to work right now. And that's the only reason that I'm able to do this, is because I'm fucking unemployed and have a shitload of money right now. I can just do this.
Yeah.
It's not accessible to anyone unless you're, already a homeowner. For example, I was talking to an incumbent counselor yesterday. They're married. Both of them are working in a professional style job. They make a decent buck. They have the means to do this. They have someone, because they're a couple of stuff. They have someone who can just clean the house, do laundry while you're out canvassing. Do you know how fucking dirty my bed is right now? I haven't washed the sheets in weeks. It's gross. I don't like it. And that's with not having a job and having the money to do this. The system is clearly inaccessible to anyone but the privileged, and I wanted to make that clear as part of my campaign.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The MSA, we talk about, we're an electoral alliance, yet our goal isn't electoralism for its own sake. The idea isn't to just copy the system and somehow sneak our way in there and subterfuge our way to a revolution. Our ultimate line is we're an electoral alliance, but our primary goal is revolution. But this is a tactic.
Yeah. tactic Lenin would support. It's like we have to take part in the electoral politics because that's what people believe in right now. We have to show them how stupid it is so that they can see the necessity of the revolutionary party.
Yeah, it's a big part of it, and it's one of the only ways we can get our ideas out there to a reasonable number of people. And so it's a big platform, but ultimately
it's free. Exactly, free publicity.
It's free publicity. Any mass media coverage we can rip from the hands of the media moguls, we'll take it. But we obviously are trying to build outside of the system as much as possible so we can challenge directly the system. So any opportunities, any collaborations, any groups that you've connected with in Guelph where you can see how going into this campaign is going to lead to the grassroots being stronger coming out of it.
That was part of the intent behind runnings, because things are actually looking like it's not quite so certain that I'll lose at this point. But part of the reason was just like knowing I would lose. I just wanted to activate a bunch of people. Some of the best activists I know are just completely beat down, hopeless. So I was hoping to get people either reactivated or new people activated, knowing there's somewhere out there they can go to actually try to enact their will as a class. So after this, if I'm the mayor, fuck it, I guess I have to be the mayor. But if I'm not, then we're going to be doing a bit of organizing,
Awesome.
Yeah, and I love that one of your platform points is consolidating all of these different networks in Guelph and helping build out these networks and connecting these different nodes on this spider's web of mutual aid that we're trying to build.
Yeah. I couldn't say it outright because it's like back in the early Soviet Union days, they would have they had a state laundry. You could just have everyone do your laundry. It's not exactly the same thing, but to partially centralize for the efficiency gains, these sort of efforts it's shown time and time again to be a clear path. But I just couldn't say hey, look, the Soviet Union did it and it worked real well. Let's do this.
Well, you never know. As you've found out, people are getting less and less afraid of the word communist.
Next time. Yeah. Next election, I'll just...
So, wrapping things up, let's imagine the whole Guelph electorate is listening to this podcast. Wouldn't that be great? What would you like to say to the electorate of Guelph? Go.
Because we're running out of time. We can't wait until times get better. There will not be a better time than now to get started. We have to take power. We have to put power back into our hands. Life's hard now, I know. There's no time for anything. Who could imagine having time to build an organization, to build a revolution and take the power from the system? But it's only going to get harder from here. I'm going to try to make things a little easier, give people a little more breathing room. But anyone with the energy to build anything at all or help anyone else at all they need to do that now. There's no time to waste.
I like that. They say the best time to plant a tree was 100 years ago. The second best time is today. The best time to join the revolution.
Exactly.
Sure, maybe it was a decade ago, but the second best time is now.
Exactly.
Amazing. I am so heartened and so thrilled with the energy and the support that you're getting. It's so, so wonderful to see. And I'm incredibly excited for how this campaign is going to play out. So I'll be seeing you out on the streets on the campaign trail. And to the rest of our comrades, stay safe, stay active, don't forget to vote, and we will see you very soon.